Hello, everybody. This is Evelyn Hudson, your reference librarian for HCTC Libraries. If you've been with me for the last two sessions, then we have talked about our introduction to searching the online databases and the internet, and then a more advanced session on searching. But it's somewhat of a different world since those sessions. So today we're going to focus on something that has a little more of a wide-reaching consequences, wide-reaching utilization, and that is evaluating sources. I'm going to switch over to a PowerPoint here. Share my screen. All right. So what we're going to talk about is information and how we define different types of information. So we're going to start with the background information. Background information includes what we call tertiary sources. So you have primary sources, secondary sources, and then tertiary. Tertiary provide the facts of a subject without any kind of commentary or critique. These tend to be your encyclopedias, dictionaries, overviews, digests, indexes, maybe just anything that just provides you with factual information. So these are your reference type materials. And you would want to use tertiary sources at the beginning of a research topic or a research assignment, pardon me, when you're just really getting into a topic, maybe even before you've narrowed down to a sufficient topic, when you're still learning about a subject and you just need to learn more about that. HCTC Libraries does subscribe year-round to Credo Reference. This is our encyclopedia type online database. And as you can see, there is a basic search bar. When you first log into it, you will have to log in using your HCTCS credentials, just like with our other databases. You can also explore these broad topic pages. So they're just more of like subject level subjects like philosophy and psychology, and it's in there, and you can kind of blow those out. As you can see from this search, which is bias, so it kind of breaks those down into different categories. So that there's media bias, there's discrimination, and then any articles associated with that. And the cool thing about Credo is it doesn't just search its own database for things using this subject. It also searches our other databases, our EBSCO databases, our Gale databases, and our ProQuest. So you're going to be able to find more than just these tertiary background sources. You're going to actually be able to get a little bit of a head start on finding actual resources for your assignment to include in your works cited page, your references page. So if you click into one of those topic pages, this is what that looks like. You're going to get the entry, the encyclopedia entry, if that's what that is, the related articles to other entries within Credo, related topic pages. There's going to be some images and some videos from YouTube linked as well. And then you get this really cool visual mind map. So that just allows you to, I think we discussed this a little bit in either the introduction to searching or the advanced searching, but we talked about mind maps and how they are subjects that are linked together with lines or webbing, so you can see relationships between subjects and topics and other topics. So Credo has that built in, which is another really useful tool. And here's those videos, and then you can see the below the videos, explore other library resources and databases. That's where you're going to find links to those secondary sources. So these are going to be more commentary, critiques, reacting to either primary information or to other research. So I cannot talk about source evaluation, just like I can't talk about searching without talking about Google and just the internet at large, because we know that you're not completely relying on HCTC libraries resources. We know that when you graduate and leave us, you lose access to those. So you need to know how to use these freely available tools as well. In fact, it's more imperative that you know how to use these than our own resources in a lot of ways, especially considering everything going on in the world right now. So Google search, how does it work? Basically, Google is an index. Google is not the internet itself, and there are some who might confuse those as being synonymous. The Google does not equal the internet, it is an index. So they use what are called spiders to go out and crawl the internet, and it collects these URLs and adds them into their index. The Google search function that we see on our screen, that search bar, that searches the index that Google has accumulated. And it is fairly large. It is not everything that is actually available on the internet. Anyone who's heard of the dark web knows this. There is a extremely, extremely enormous pool of the internet that is almost inaccessible to your casual user. So the Google search, how that works, how they retrieve things from their index, it's mostly secretive. It's changed many, many times since Google came into the world. They're refining it probably almost every day, I would imagine. The company itself is extremely large. It's international. They also, the kinds of elements in the algorithm to the public that they search is this trustworthiness that they don't necessarily define of linked sites. And that can include if other sites are linked in it, if those links are live, what sites that links to, if those have been flagged as not being, trustworthy sites. It also uses where you're from. So anytime you give your phone or your computer permission to track your location, Google is very likely pinning your region and kind of scoping your search to what other people in the area are searching, especially if they're related. It will also use your past searches to kind of what your intentions are, what you're searching for, what you might mean if you misspell something, if you've searched for a topic in the past and you're searching for it again, and you don't clear those history, those cookies, that cache, it's going to use those searches as well. And again, that natural language, this is what allows you to kind of just type anything into the search bar and still get something that's fairly relevant to what you're searching, because it knows if you're misspelling a word, it's going to default to the actual word that you're trying to spell. It's going to understand stop words, those the, or, and all those. So it is a fairly intelligent piece of software. It's very impressive, and we're very, very thankful that Google search is the thing. I'm going to attempt to play this video through the okay. So that is just a little overview of how Google works. If that video didn't play through, I will make sure that I link that in the materials that I couple with this presentation. So we're going to look into how we can use Google to search for what we need more efficiently, how we can find really reliable sources through Google, and kind of weed out some of the noise that's just it's always kind of thrown into the mix because of sponsored ads and just other factors that we're fully aware of. So if you want to do a Google search and then you want to narrow by either government sources or educational sources that .edu, you do have the option in the advanced search to weed out any of the .com URLs, any of the blog type URLs, anything that might be owned by an individual or might just not be the best source. If you wanted to prioritize these government or educational sources, you could do that through Google as well. And that's under settings and advanced search. And then you would go below narrow your results by and site or domain. And again, you can type in anything that might be your preference. And then again, you might not care if you use the .coms, in which case you wouldn't need the advanced search, or if you wanted to weed out some of these .orgs, you could come in and you could add that as well. But you can type in the .gov, the .edus, whatever your preference is there. So Wikipedia, like Google, is a really excellent resource that we're very happy we have now to the general public as opposed to what was available even 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Wikipedia is very helpful. I use it myself pretty much almost daily. In a lot of ways, using Google search, you have no choice but to use Wikipedia because Wikipedia and Google do have a partnership where Google will integrate the Wikipedia search pages or their entries into the results of a Google search. That's why whenever you do a search, you're likely to get those Wikipedia links at the top of your page, and then now they have that little box out beside your search results that kind of shows you images and dates and countries, you know, if it's associated with an individual. Wikipedia kind of has their own little widget type thing, and that is because of this partnership. Wikipedia, there are over 5 million English language articles. Wikipedia is international, so there's even more not English. So it is an enormous structure or sphere, whatever you want to call it. There are many active users. And the important thing to keep in mind with Wikipedia is that anybody can create an account, anybody can make changes or write an article, which is, you know, both a weakness and a strength because anyone can go in and insert misinformation into an article. There is no way to kind of manage that from the top. But if someone were to go into a Wikipedia article, put something in that was baloney, then other users, of course, can come through and be editors. They work as kind of this editorial standard, kind of weeding out bad content and keeping it updated. It's just there is always this element of if you're reading an article and the information is just so sophisticatedly inserted that you don't realize that it's, you know, not true. It's, you know, not one of those ridiculous inserts where it's like, okay, that's definitely fake. It could be so much time before a user comes through and fixes that. In which case it could be, you know, a day or a week or a month. And how many people have seen that and taken that for truth? So that is a shortcoming of Wikipedia. There is a need to support the information with citations, and they will flag statements or data that is not cited as saying it has not been cited means a citation. So you do kind of get this this heads up of like, you know, take all this with a grain of salt because we're not sure where they're getting this information. So those are always indicated within Wikipedia. And they, typically the false information is weeded out. It's just a matter of how long. In my undergrad experience, one of our assignments for our FYE, what's known as FYE at the time, our freshman year experience, was to go into a Wikipedia article and make a change. And for my change, it stayed up for about a month because our job was to monitor that and to write a paper on it from our experience. So that was a pretty long time. This was back in 2008. And it's likely there's far more users now, so maybe there's more people scanning these articles and keeping them updated. But just remember that is a possibility. So this is what that Wikipedia integration looks like. You've all probably seen this, just doing a casual Google search. It's called the knowledge graph. And there's some concerns with prioritizing the Wikipedia entries and this knowledge graph at the top of every single search, or nearly every search. It's fairly common now. Especially if someone is going in and altering information, especially for maybe current topics or high-profile individuals. So again, talking about online free sources that you're more likely to interact with long term, or that you might prefer even now. YouTube is another amazing source. I am a millennial. I grew up in a time when YouTube really took off, and it became this entertainment venue for us. I probably watch about 3/4 of my entertainment content on YouTube. I'm watching individual YouTubers. Their talk show hosts have segments on YouTube. You've got the news on YouTube. You can find the Kentucky governor streams live on YouTube even. So content quality, it really does vary depending on the creator and any affiliation they have, if with a production value that they're able to produce. So you have these really excellent YouTube resources like Crash Course, the Philip DeFranco Show. You have traditional publications who also have YouTube channels. New York Times do. Then you've got all the news stations, MSNBC, CNN, Fox. They all have their own YouTube channels as well. Then, of course, on the flip side of that, you have individuals who might not have any kind of editing process or fact-checking mechanism or production beyond just uploading raw video from their cell phones. This is, the era of the double rainbow guy who captured this on his phone and uploaded it. But there are a lot more meaningful videos that might go onto the internet like that without any sort of fact checking, or it is just pure opinion being put out. And then, of course, you also have individual professionals with vlogs like Dr. Mike. So with all of this content and all of these fantastic platforms where we can find good information right alongside the bad. And you can't always trust these companies to go through and to have really advanced or sophisticated algorithms to kind of warn you what's good and bad. There is some subjectivity in that as well. Something can be good and not necessarily be what we at the college or we in an academic setting would consider scholarly, but for your everyday life, it's good information. And of course, beyond college, you're most likely not going to be doing a lot of research assignments in the way that we might present them to you. They're going to be much more complexity to it. It's going to maybe be a medical issue, a health issue. So learning the skills to evaluate sources outside of an academic setting is very valuable. And what I'm about to show you, you can use both in an academic setting, in your personal life. It is just a good all-around thing to keep in mind when you're finding information online, which is just the majority of the way we find information is online. And even in print, not everything you read in a print book is created equally. So this could also be very useful there. So evaluation tool, these are intended to help you determine the significance, worth, condition. This involves a method of appraisal or study. They give you standards or questions that you can ask yourself to evaluate this piece of information, this platform, or whatever it is that you are needing to understand about an item. We'll use the CRAP test in the HCTC library space. This was created by some academic librarians, I believe, out of California. And this is an acronym. CRAP stands for C, currency, R, relevant or relevance, A, authority, the second A, accurate or accuracy, P, purpose. So when you're looking at a piece of information or a platform or some kind of information, sorry, my kid is crying in the other room, but you should ask yourself, is it current, or what is the timeliness of the information you're looking at? What's the relevance of currency to the article and to your information need? So questions you can ask yourself for this is, when was the information published or posted? Has it been revised or updated? Is this information current or out of date for the topic? Are the links functional? This is a really important one, again, for what is going on in the world right now. We are really, in some ways, lucky that we get to witness this almost daily evolving situation, because we can see how information can go out of date, like literally at the snap of a finger. It's changing every day, and we're learning new things, and we're having to throw away the things I've learned yesterday, literally yesterday. So this is a really important element of judging information sources. And this is not just for the coronavirus, COVID-19. This is medical information in general, which fluctuates. Typically every 5 years, you want to make sure that you're getting information from within that time frame, because there's just so much research that's being done, and information is getting updated, and procedures and guidances are being updated. That publication date, the currency of the item, is very important in a lot of those situations. So you can find the publication date of the article. Blogs will have those timestamps. Tweets have timestamps. YouTube videos have dates on them as well. And then if a news article or something comes out, and if they're doing updates to that story, they will post those updates along with the original publication date. So it's important to look for those revision dates as well. And this is also where you're going to be able to find if corrections have been made. If bad information was put out, they changed it to correct it, they would have the date that was changed and corrected as well. So relevancy, this is the importance of the information for your needs. And this is where there is a lot of subjectivity, and where these different information platforms might come in handy in different areas of your life. In a classroom setting for a research article or a research assignment, you might very well be steered to our library databases, which is fantastic. They're really, really valuable tools. They're excellent resources. A lot of the evaluation work has already been done for you because they are updated. You can sort easily by publication dates, by research topics, by several different factors. So a lot of that work is done for you, as opposed to what is out there in the internet at large. But if you're looking for something in your day-to-day life that is not necessarily relevant to a scholarly topic, like this is not a medical topic, maybe this is something like you are searching for a car, there that is kind of its own type of research, and it's important that you find good information for that, because that is so very important, especially in your day-to-day life. I know my car is a lifeline for me, as it is for so many around here where it's a rural area. You want to make sure you're getting the best information when you're looking to buy a car. So, some questions you can ask yourself about relevancy. Does the information relate to your topic or answer your question? That seems very, very obvious, but there are, a lot of people who might do a search and gets off topic because maybe the search engine didn't understand what they wanted, so they're giving them stuff that's just totally left field, that you just don't need and you can suss out. Who is the intended audience of the information object that you're accessing? There are some differences, of course, in writing to children, writing to high schoolers, writing to adults or parents, writing to patients, writing to consumers. This will change how they relay information to you. Is the information at an appropriate level? This goes back to that the age level, grade level. Is this appropriate to the situation? This is more of an academic concern, maybe somewhat of a health, if you're doing health research concern, but is this written in such a way that it is appropriate to use as an adult, as a college student, to put into a research assignment? Because of course you wouldn't want to use something from Highlights, the magazine that we all used to read in the dentist's office. I'm not even sure if they do articles, but you wouldn't want to cite something like that in your English 101 class or English 102 class, ideally. Another question you can ask yourself, have you looked at a variety of sources before choosing this one? Don't just automatically go with the first article that you find in a search. Make sure that you are really doing the work and acquiring like a pool of articles that you can choose from. Again, this is important for more of your college career when you're writing research papers. You want to make sure that you doing the research and choosing relevant topics, relevant research that's not just kind of relevant and you're just changing your research topic to fit what you're finding. Make sure you're really digging into your topic and not settling. And again, this is very nail on or hammer. Is it nail on the head? Anyway, would you be comfortable using the source for a research paper? That goes back to intended audience, appropriate level, variety of sources. Is it authoritative? And I do mention, I talk about this a little bit more later on, but it's something to think about until we get there. Authority and how we consider authority or authoritative figures is subjective as well in some cases. There are a lot of branches of academia which have excluded women and people of color in the past, really minority type populations. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're talking about authority. And again, we will get into that a little later, but I want you to sit and think on that a little bit. So some questions you can ask yourself about authority is who is the author, publisher, source, or sponsor? Are the author's credentials or organizational affiliations given? What are the author's credentials or organizational affiliations? What are the author's qualifications to write on this topic? Is there contact information, such as a publisher or an email address? Does the URL reveal anything about the author or source? Look at URLs has become increasingly important as a way to kind of weed out some bad sources. This is especially true for copycat URLs. a lot of major websites struggle with people taking a very, very similar looking URL to theirs and kind of siphoning off traffic to them. This is one of those fake news issues. I believe ABC had this issue. There was a very similar looking URL. So pay attention to that URL when you're searching on the internet, especially if you're accurate. So reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the content. So questions you can ask yourself about accuracy: where does the information come from? Is the information supported by evidence? This is a very important question, especially again now. There is not a lot of supporting evidence to information that's being put out just because it's so new that there hasn't been time to really provide a lot of evidence. So that is very important to keep in mind if you're out there on the internet and you're finding information about what's going on now with the coronavirus. Has the information been reviewed, which is peer reviewed or refereed? And we'll get into peer review here in a minute as well. Can you verify any of the information in another source? Does the language or tone seem biased or free of emotion? And are there spelling, grammar, or other typographical errors? Finally, the last standard in our evaluation tool: what is the purpose? So this is the reason the information exists, in that you're finding it. What is the purpose of the information? And do the authors or sponsors make their intentions or purpose clear? Is this information factual? Is this like an encyclopedia entry? Is it an opinion? Is it an op-ed in the newspaper? Is this propaganda? Is this something that we're seeing being published by state news agencies? Like Russia has a state TV station, and North Korea does. China has a lot of propaganda that they put out. Does the point of view appear objective and impartial? And this is a big one. These are probably what you're going to run into the most, because it's nearly impossible for a lot of these online sources, these news sources, to not have some kind of bias. And these might be political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, or personal, because biases are obviously intrinsic in people. There are flaws. We can't really say we don't have them. We can try to keep them out of aspects of our life, but they kind of leak in because they're just such a huge integral part of who we are. So just keep in mind that these biases exist, and look for them, and try to see if that is something that is overriding the purpose of this piece of information, or is this just something that's kind of creeped in. So when we're talking about evaluating sources in general, there are largely two different kinds of sources, and these are popular and scholarly. And there's kind of a third, which is trade. And these are designations that we kind of sort our library materials into: popular, scholarly, and trade. So popular sources, these include magazines. So these big glossy magazines, these multiple pages of ads, these are popular sources. They're largely written by journalists kept on staff at these companies. It's very unlikely you're going to have any kind of peer review, which is the process of a board of people under people with the same qualifications or higher qualifications coming to a consensus on the facts or the data within the article. So these are, again, journalists. They're professional journalists. They do have editorial standards. Some of them will disclose them on their website. You can go to the website. You can look at their standards. They do fact checking. They do issue corrections, and they disclose outside sources. They may disclose sponsors. So that information is there. These are not bad sources, but they would be considered scholarly or peer-reviewed or academic. Newspapers are also considered popular sources, and that is because they are articles are written by professional journalists. They don't go through that peer review process. They do have their own, again, standards of editing. They issue corrections. They may issue corrections. They may do fact checking. They may disclose their sources. But they do have their own standards for editing. They also include opinion articles by non-journalists, local papers. They'll publish stuff written just by community members. And then sometimes you may also, you might get someone who is expert in a topic writing about it in a newspaper, but again, does not go through that peer review process. It has been written by one person, be looked over by an editor, and then published. Digital content creators, these are those YouTubers, these are these kind of new media companies that are coming out, and you're going to see these integrated into your Facebook timelines, your Twitter timelines. That's BuzzFeed, and now this. And this content is not necessarily generated by what we've traditionally seen as professional journalists, like you get with the New York Times, or even like what we would have, say, in the Jackson Times Voice, people who gone maybe through a journalism program in college. They have that degree. They have some element of authority on paper. These could just be YouTube personalities. These could be individuals who have just kind of taken an interest in this. Doesn't mean the information they're putting out is bad. Doesn't mean it's fake information. It just means that they don't necessarily have traditional credentials to back up. These are also these entertainment channels. Again, the Philip DeFranco show I talked about earlier. He is a like a news blogger, vlogger type company, and he's expanded a lot. But he started out a little one-man show back in the day in 2007. So these can be viewed as biased more often than not. They are certainly not shy of inserting bias. Usually, I have seen that they claim the bias, they own it, so at least they're honest about it, and you're aware of it. So they're not trying to sneak it by you, I want to say. The editorial process may be harder to discern. Some of these companies may not disclose the way that they edit their content or their fact-checking process, especially companies like BuzzFeed or Now This. So that is something to be aware of. And of course, a lot of these are in a new media format. So they're not coming out in print. They're not coming out in a newspaper or in a magazine. They're being integrated into your social media. You might see them as like short videos, as memes, as YouTube videos. It's really amazing the way that they are creating this new content. And it's also probably how the majority of people are getting information. So this is a good thing to keep in mind when you're accessing these sources. So getting into the scholarly side of sources, the peer review. So the peer review process. This is by which something proposed as for research or publication is evaluated by a group of experts in the appropriate field. The peer review process has to be done before they will publish research in these journals, in these academic type publications. These tend to cost a lot of money. There are some open access ones now that are free or cheaper, but in the case of libraries, academic libraries like us, we pay a good deal of money to access these academic and scholarly sources. And a lot of times we also don't even have access to the newest research. There is what's called an embargo. So anything published within the last year, we can't access until a year later. So scholarly journals, these will favor established standards, established authorities. These are going to really, really place a lot of emphasis on those traditional credentials that we mentioned. You would need the diplomas, you would need the work experience within the field. You would need to have published prior research in some cases. It's all really built upon these traditional means of established authority. So the trouble with this, which I had brought up earlier, when considering authority with sources, is that new ideas, changes to traditionally held beliefs, even if they are putting out research that is scientifically sound, may not be accepted. It may not be widely seen as best for the field, so they may reject it. It may not get published as often. This largely probably comes from these minority populations. Again, with academic publishing, a lot of these academics writing are older, male, white. So there is a real lack of the voices from other demographics in there. So this is just something to keep in mind with scholarly sources. They're not perfect either by any means. There's a lot of room for growth and for improvement. And we could be missing out on really good information if we only close ourselves off to anything that's not scholarly or peer-reviewed. So I talked about open access. These are either free type academic research or lower cost versus the traditional publishing, which tends to cost a lot more, tends to favor those traditional credentials and authorities. So these open source journals are growing in popularity. You may encounter them within your college career here. Some professors may prefer them because they're open access, or cheaper, or they have more access to them themselves through another professional organization. These tend to also be peer reviewed. They may show up in social media or blogs. I know, again, with the coronavirus, there's a lot of academic material that's being made free because of the nature of the problem, and we want to get information out there to the general public that's good information. So they're sharing these open access articles pretty widely on Facebook, and I've seen them. So it's really interesting to see how this is changing and how academic publishing is really opening up to the general public. A good repository of open access journals, if anyone's interested, is the Directory of Open Access Journals. I've got that linked in our online learning LibGuide. Funding, how they can get by without charging as much as the traditional journals do, because these are getting very expensive. This is via donations. These come from sponsors. If they have a membership, the members will pay a fee and then publish your members. This, again, is an emerging industry, so it has to be approached with some caution, just like the new media industry with the YouTubers and BuzzFeed. We should always, but any sort of information, you should always approach with some caution. Just never take what anyone tells you at face value. Always be prepared to ask questions. This is just a good rule of thumb for anything in your life. You're going to open yourself up to a greater capacity of just learning and enjoying if you learn to ask questions now and not believe everything that you're told from most people, honestly. So traditional scholarly publishing, this is an established industry. There's transparent standards. You know, they've gone through the rigmarole. They've had their editing standards and stuff put out on the internet or made available through their print journals, their online journal, what's the word I'm looking for? Access points, like our databases. They sell largely to academic colleges, academic libraries like ours. So they put all of this information out through those channels. Unfortunately, access to the traditional print and online scholarly articles is getting very expensive for most institutions facing federal state funding cuts. Higher ed in Kentucky has taken something of like, I believe, 38% cut since 2008, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. Maybe do your own research, but there's been a massive cut. So, of course, we have to prioritize what resources we can afford and what's getting used. And a lot of what these college libraries are looking at are these scholarly journals. And then, of course, what we manage to keep on the shelves is print. It's difficult in traditional scholarly publishing for emerging views or minority populations to be published, so that is a concern. Authority and diversity. So authoritative voices in scholarly fields, overwhelmingly white males. Workforce is increasingly diversifying. You've got women going into the workforce, or women have been in the workforce for, decades now, and still not being represented in scholarly publications. And then you've got people from varying socioeconomic backgrounds, from urban versus rural. This is affecting every element, every demographic. But again, this publishing field is overwhelmingly white male, upper middle class. So that excludes a lot of voices, a lot of potential for rethinking entire fields, and information out there. So as we start to see diversification, especially in higher ed and research, both through gender and socioeconomic and race and cultures, then I think that there's going to have to be a shift in traditional publishing and what our academic articles look like and how we interact with information. So I wanted to just end this presentation with a few housekeeping kind of notes. I know with the shift to online for everybody, it's been an incredibly stressful and difficult couple weeks, and we're potentially looking at more time being stressed out. Just know that from the other side of this, working with the college, with the HCTC and KCTCS, that our faculty and staff are genuinely trying to do everything they can for every individual student to support them. We care very, very deeply that you all succeed. And however that looks like, however success looks like getting through this, for our generation, unprecedented time, they're going to work with you. So don't just disappear. Reach out to somebody, reach out to your advisor, to your instructors, to your student support services, to your financial aid, to the library. We're always here. We have extended our live chat hours from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, you can still use that service. It's going to send us a text or an email. You can still reach out to us, and we will try our best to get to that. If not, definitely by Monday morning, we will reply. We have a new category in our LibGuides. If you go to the LibGuides web page on our library website, you can narrow by subject and distance learning. That's what that first URL is. And you're going to find a collection of guides targeted for this particular what we're going through. So we've picked out some of the more important ones, something that might be more timely, how to deal with access issues with our databases. If you're having trouble logging in there, we've got a guide for that. We've got the chat service linked through there. It's that little green Ask a Question tab. You can always use that. And that's what that second URL is. That takes you directly to that guide, and it shows you how to open that up and submit. You can also follow the HCTC library on Twitter. Our handle is at HCTC_library. You can also follow the college on Twitter. And then you can follow the system as well. There are several of us out there. And what we generally post is, databases. If there's known access issues, we'll try to keep you updated on that. If we have updated services, if we purchase and make available a new service, we'll put it there. If we have events, we'd put them there. And then we just try to share some fun stuff here and there. So reach out to us. You can DM us on Twitter. That's another venue you have to access somebody at the college if you're having trouble. And then just with everything that's going on here, I also want to let you know that the HCTC does have a COVID-19 resource page. This is very this is specific to students and how you can reach out to us, what resources are available to you as a student. And then the Kentucky State has the Kentucky COVID-19 website, and this is going to give you broader resources. If you are some of the people who lost their jobs and you need to file for unemployment, you can do that there. If you need to reach out for mental health resources, you can do that there. There's the hotline. So if you're worried but not showing any sort of symptoms, you can call that hotline. Or if you're showing symptoms but you're worried about going into your doctor, I believe they have guidance on that website on what to do in those instances. And then the updates in the state cases, and just it's a fantastic resource. It is a definitive resource. It's trustworthy. So get your information directly from there. Get it from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. Get it from the WHO, the World Health Organization. Again, use these tools, use that evaluation tool in this instance to really go through and parse the information that you're seeing there, because a lot of it is bad information. Some of it could be potentially detrimental, life-threatening to some people. There's a meme going around that gargling warm water kills the coronavirus. This is not true. So it's just stuff like that you really need to be checking out before you share it, and use this evaluation tool to do that. So with this webinar, I'm going to be including a activity that you can use, a live activity you can go through and you can put to work what you've learned here with the CRAP tool. This is evaluating sources based off currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So you will get to practice with that. And again, if you need anything, if you need further assistance with any kind of research, finding resources, especially since we do not have access to the print resources right now, reach out to the library. We have ebooks, we have articles. We will help you scour Google Scholar. We can help you with any of that. So just reach out to us. We are always here. I'm going to switch back to my screen. And I hope everybody stays healthy. I hope that we can see you sooner rather than later back on campus. I know we desperately miss our campus and HCTC, but we're all here together. We're still working for you. We're fighting for you. So reach out to somebody if you need help with anything. And again, the library is always here to help. We always have been, always will be. Thank you all. Stay healthy.